Okay, good morning, everybody. We still have a few people. Joining, but we'll make a start. Welcome to the May parental webinar. Normal rules apply for our webinar today. If everybody could stay on mute, please, so the presenter can concentrate on her presentation, that would be fantastic. As always, the recording of this session, together with the presentation and any other useful resources discussed, will be sent out to you afterwards. This month, we are so excited to have our parental friend, guest author, and industry expert, Stacey Kelly, with us today. Stacey's going to be helping us with nurturing emotional well-being, planting positive seeds, and empowering children. A little bit about Stacey. She's a former French and Spanish teacher, a parent to 2 wonderful children, and the founder of Early Years Storybox. After becoming a mum, Stacey left her teaching career and started writing and illustrating her books to help support her children through the different transitional stages, like leaving nursery and starting school. She's created an exclusive collection for childcare settings that are gifted on special occasions like first days, last days, Christmas and Easter, and she's launched a new collection for parents too. Her mission is to support as many children as she can through story time and to give childcare settings an affordable and special gifting solution that truly makes a difference. Today, Stacey's going to be discussing how the subconscious mind works, how belief systems are created and how we are subconsciously guided by these belief systems, how to instill positive belief systems in children, and tools and tricks to support emotional well-being. So without further ado, then we welcome Stacey.
Hi everyone. So today I'm going to talk about nurturing emotional well-being and how the subconscious mind basically works, how we create belief systems in childhood and how these silently guide us through life. So I need a little cue, don't I, where
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, next one, please. So I was really surprised to learn that up to 95% of what we do is completely and utterly subconscious. So that means that there's only 5% of what we do we're in control of at any one point. So we are silently guided by our subconscious mind. Only 5% of what we do we are aware of. Now, it sounds crazy, but just bear with me. In our subconscious mind, if you click the next slide, Gail. In our subconscious mind, there are belief systems. So whatever we hear, see, and feel on a consistent basis growing up becomes belief systems that then get stored in our subconscious mind. And 95% of what we do, we are completely unaware of. And I always use the analogy of when we drive a car. When we first get in a car, we're thinking about everything. I remember when I was 17 and I did my license, I had to think about everything, clutch, gears, everything. But then over time and repetition, all of a sudden those things become complete autopilot and we end up getting from A to B without even knowing how we've got there. And that's exactly how the subconscious mind works. As a child, what we see, hear and feel on a consistent basis, and the key word here is consistent, what we see, hear and feel on a consistent basis forms these belief systems. And it's almost like then we look at the world through a lens influenced by these belief systems. Next. So, for instance, if as a child you grew up and you consistently felt like you were not good enough, this over time would form a belief system that becomes a blueprint for how we feel. Now, there's good beliefs, there's bad beliefs. It's not going to be all bad, it's not going to be all good, but I'm just using this not good enough example because I think, to be honest, through all the work I've done, the not good enough thing seems to be the most prevalent in most people's lives. So if you grow up and you feel like you're not good enough consistently, it will form a belief system. And then it's almost like we look at the world influenced by this belief system. So an example of this is if 2 people walked into a room, there's a person in that room that is larger than life, they're dominating the audience. One person could go into that room and think, wow, look at that person. They are the most inspiring person I've ever seen in my life. Somebody else could then walk into that room and they could think, well, they think they're better than me and they're looking down the nose at me. It's exactly the same scenario, but viewed through a different lens. And there's a good chance that the person that thinks that they're being looked down on or that person is too big for the boots, there's a good chance that they are looking at the world influenced by a belief that they are not good enough. And this it affects how you perceive things and how you view the world. Next one. So if you imagine, like, your belief systems are like energetic jigsaw pieces. So whatever belief system you've got, that belief system will fit to some degree with what's going on. Now, it's a really hard concept to get your head around this, but if you just imagine the subconscious mind, which is 95% of what we do, is completely literal and illogical. Now, and its main job is to keep us safe. Now, safe to you and me would be to make great choices, to surround yourself with good people, to make positive choices for yourself. But safe to your subconscious mind is being in alignment with your beliefs. It's almost like a computer. When you've got a computer, if someone put a virus on the computer wouldn't go, oh, this is a virus, I can't do that. It would just adhere to the rules that it's being given. And your subconscious mind is like that with your belief system. So if something's happening as you're growing up, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that you've had a bad childhood or anything like that, things that happen on a consistent basis, the literal message of that will form a belief system. And your brain doesn't go, oh no, this is not good for me. It goes, oh, okay, so this is what we believe. And that gets embedded. So then your subconscious mind's job is to keep you safe. And safe to your subconscious mind is in alignment with that belief. So for example, if you do have a belief system that you are not good enough, your subconscious mind's job, 95% of your mind, is working really hard to keep you safe, but keep you in alignment with that belief. And there's actually something in our brain called a reticular activating system. And this is the part of our brain that's like the gatekeeper. So for example, the 95% of what we're not aware of has to be filtered out. If you think about today, you're all looking at this screen. Imagine if your brain didn't have the ability to filter out things. At the minute, there's things around you, there's sounds coming from outside. Your brain is filtering all that out and it's keeping you on track. Yeah, so it filters in the 5% that's relevant to us. And this 5% is based on what's important to us and our belief systems. So this is why, an example, when, for instance, you are trying for a baby, all of a sudden, all you see everywhere is babies. I don't know about you, when I was trying for a baby and it took me a long time to get pregnant, all I could see were babies everywhere. And I thought, it's like the universe has got it in for me, because they're throwing babies at me everywhere. It isn't that those babies weren't there before. It's that your brain now thinks, oh, this is important. So your reticular activating system allows that information to come in. Like when you buy a new car, all of a sudden you see that exact car everywhere. They were always there. It's just that it filters it in, and it filters it in on belief systems. So for example, if you've got a belief system that you're not good enough, you will go into a room full of 100 people, and I am pretty sure that you will filter in the people that validate that belief. And this is why, and I used to be this girl, the girl who likes the bad boy, who treats her badly, goes from one bad boy to another bad boy to another bad boy. It is not a coincidence. Your brain is trying to filtering the people in, and you are attracted to the people that validate your belief systems. So it's really, really powerful that it's really, really important that we try to get these belief systems correct, because our intention as well can often be, we're always coming from the right place. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. You know, I've got 2 children that are very, very strong-willed. I don't always get it right. But since I've known all these things, it's just helped me to tweak what I do, because what we intend on doing, and our intention is always pure, but actually the message that we give can sometimes get lost in translation because the subconscious mind is so literal. So for example, an example here is failure. If you take a parent that is very competitive and they want to create a little winner, and all they say things like, we don't fail, we're winners, we don't come second. If we come second, we may as well come last. Failure is not an option. Come on, we can do it, we are winners. That parent's intention is to create a little winner. But the literal message of that statement and those actions is that failure is not an option, failure is not accepted. Now, if this is done over a consistent basis, that becomes a belief system within us that failure is not an option, failure is not accepted. Well, we're not going to become a winner if we can't fail. The people that are the most successful people in the world see failure as a stepping stone for success. They've failed probably 1,000,000 times before they hit the jackpot. And we have to be able to fail. So if you have a belief inside you that failure is not an option, you're basically you're going to struggle to step out your comfort zone. And what you are actually going to create is probably someone who's a perfectionist, someone who fears failure, someone who struggles to step out of the comfort zone and keeps themselves quite small, because actually the minute you step out your comfort zone, you risk failing, and failure's unsafe. So what we need to be doing really to create a little winner is we need to be teaching that failure is a good thing if we learn and we grow from it. Failure is great because it's an opportunity to get better. So it's just a slight tweak. And here you can see that the intention of that parent is through love and wanting them to have the best and be the best. But the reality is that the literal message that they're giving is not conducive to what they wanted to achieve. Does that make sense? So next slide. So we need to be looking at the literal messages of what we do. Is the literal message of our actions on a consistent basis that challenges our opportunities? Is it that they're loved and they're safe? Are they worthy? Are they unique? Is being unique brilliant? Who have we got? Is it that failure is a lesson and that they're good enough? Because we all make mistakes. Children are going to make many mistakes. We make mistakes. I went 40 this week and I make mistakes continually. You know, they need to learn that these mistakes are actually a stepping stone. And it's, you know, do they feel safe within those mistakes? And whatever I say today, don't think for a minute that, you know, it's not about reproaching ourselves and feeling bad. I've done things throughout my parenting journey. And as I've learned different things and gone along, I've tweaked it. I've not always done things the way that I do them. It's just about looking and thinking, right, do I need to possibly tweak a few things? Now I know how this subconscious mind works and how it's very literal. Am I actually giving the messages that I want? Next one. Next. So we need to think, how do we want children to be in the future? And then bring it right back to now and think, are the messages of what we're doing now conducive to that? So for example, no problem is too big or small. We want them to know that when they're teenagers, there's no problem too big or small. We want them to come to us. We need to make sure that they realize that when they're younger. I've got an example of this. My little boy, when he was 2 years old, I gave him a red pen instead of a blue pen. And you would think that the world was entirely going to end. You'd think that I'd committed the biggest crime ever. He was on the floor, slung himself on the floor, screaming, crying. Now, that's 5 years ago. So in my 35-year-old brain at that point, I thought, this is absolutely ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I've given you a red pen instead of a blue pen. It is not the end of the world. However, I stopped myself in my tracks and I thought, right, okay, he's 2. He's got a 2-year-old perspective. Cast your mind back to when you were 15 and your heart was broken. The pain that you felt in that moment was horrific. However, now as a 40-year-old woman, I look back to my 15-year-old self and think, I really wish I had problems that small. You know, like I didn't know I was born back then. But the point of this is that my feelings and pain at 15 was just as powerful as when I go through something at 40. It's just that at 40, because I've got older, my problems have got bigger. And that goes back even further. So then we get to that 15-year-old girl and we think, right, okay, her pain was really strong. The problem wasn't that bad, but it was pretty bad. Cast your mind, well, you won't be able to cast your mind. Well, I can't cast my mind back to 2. But think about it from a 2-year-old. That little boy got given the wrong pen, lost his mind completely. His feelings are probably as powerful as that 15-year-old girl and that 40-year-old woman. It's just that his problem is relative to his age. So in that moment, it is so difficult to not go, it's ridiculous. Come on, get on with it. And I have done that. But in reality, if we want them to know that no problem's too big or small, my approach now, knowing what I know, would be, right, okay, Noah, Mummy's really sorry that I gave you the wrong pen. I realise it's really frustrating. I'm going to sit with you until you calm down. Now, at 2 years old, you've lost them, haven't you, for a solid 20 minutes. Once they've gone, they've gone. They struggle to regulate themselves. But in that moment, he knew that his feelings were validated. He carried on with his little tantrum, but my calm helped to regulate him a bit quicker. The other thing is, if we want teenagers to come to us with their problems and not isolate themselves, we need to think, do our behaviour policies, are they conducive to that? Or, for example, I grew up with, it was actually called the naughty corner back in the day, grew up with the naughty corner, and we'd get sent off to the naughty corner. Now, it works as a behaviour management tool, but if we don't want children to isolate themselves when they're older, then that message that we need to be giving them now needs to be in alignment with that. And I'm not saying let them get away with everything that they, there's no consequences, but now that knowing what I know, I do natural consequences and give children natural consequences. And I would sit with my child. They would know that I weren't very happy, but I would sit with them. Rather than having time out, I would do time in. So they'd get all the same consequences, but knowing that I am by their side. But like I say, this isn't about reproaching ourselves for what we do. It's just about looking at it through a different perspective. Next slide, please, Gail. And it's about questioning our own programming, because quite often we're programmed from our own parents. We kind of we're all on autopilot. So, for example, come on. When I was younger, the way that my parents did it was we forced apology. If you did something wrong, you said sorry. Say sorry. And I did exactly the same. And then this one day, my little boy, who was 3, I'm not painting him a very good light, am I really? He is a beautiful child. It's just that the examples I'm giving, obviously, are helping with this presentation. And when he was 3 years old, he whacked his sister across the head with a toy. And I was like, Noah, say sorry to Eleni. And I'm stood there and I thought, and you know what it's like, you're committed, aren't you? And I thought, I'm staying here till next September if I have to. You're saying sorry. And I say sorry, no. And, unfortunately, he's got my stubbornness. So we were there about a solid half an hour. And then eventually he said sorry, got the toy and whacked her again. And in that moment, I thought, I need to question what I'm doing here, because actually, what am I teaching him? I'm teaching him that sorry is a magic word and that actually that's all he needs to say. And then he just went and did the exact same again. So I thought to myself in that moment, actually, the word sorry in an apology is probably the least important thing. I decided, in that moment, that's when I talk about tweaking our own programming, I stopped myself in my tracks and thought, you know what? I don't know if this is giving the right message. So I decided to try something different. Next slide, please, Gail. And what I did was I decided to do these 5 steps and just to see how it goes. Number 1, I'd give a natural consequence. So he whacked his sister with the toy got taken away, didn't have it for the rest of the day. I moved him away from his sister. Number 2, I acknowledged Eleni's feelings for getting hit, but I also acknowledged his feelings because he was frustrated. How did you feel? Why did you do that? I was frustrated, Mummy. She annoyed me. I wouldn't have said frustrated at 3. He said, she made me mad. Well, I know you felt frustrated, but we don't hit people. So it's acknowledging how he feels. Then I developed empathy by saying, how do you think it made Eleni feel when you smacked her? And he was like, well, not very nice. I'm like, exactly. So is there something else we could do? Rather than doing that, what else could we do? So number 4, find an alternative solution. It was like, well, I could come and tell you. And I was like, that's an amazing thing. That would be much better. Come and tell me and let me sort it out. And then number 5, I'd say to him, are you going to apologise to Eleni? And if he said no, I'd just say, okay, well, I'm going to do it for you. And I would apologise on his behalf. Eleni, I'm sure Noah's very sorry because he didn't mean to hit you. He felt very frustrated, but he knows that he won't do that next time. And if you do that on a repeated cycle, which I did, if it hadn't worked, I would have, you move on to the next strategy, don't you? None of us have a handbook. But I did this on a repeated basis. And by the time I'd done it a few times, I got to the model, the apology bit, and Noah, he apologized because he saw and he learned from how I acted. So next slide. So there's lots of, back one, I think my things come up. But So, there we go. So other things we can do. So we know that the subconscious mind is programmed by repetition and consistency. So affirmations are positive statements. Now, affirmations are not going to fix your life. I'm not going to sit here and say, if you tell yourself that you can do it 1,000 times, it's going to make you invincible. But what affirmations do is our brain absorbs it. And actually, what we tell ourselves is the truth. It becomes the truth. If you say that you can, there's a quote in there, is it Henry Ford or someone like that? If you say you can or you can't, you're right. So the idea of affirmations is that you can, with my children, we have an affirmation that we'll do, and we might have one for the week. So, I am loved. And we'll wake up every morning and be like, I am loved. And we'll say it and we make it fun and we shout it and we act silly. But they are absorbing this, and it's also teaching children about positive self-talk, because the other thing is, how often do we speak to ourselves in a way that we'd never ever speak to anyone else? We would never say the things to other people that we say to ourselves. And we need to get our children, because we can create our own belief systems. So we need to teach our children about positive self-talk. So affirmations are a fantastic way to start your day by chanting an affirmation, a positive statement. You can take a child if someone in your setting is struggling with something. I still do a bit of teaching every now and again. And there was a child that was really struggling and saying, I can't do it. And I stopped her and I was like, right, say, I can do it. And she was like, I can do it. I can do anything I set my mind to. I can do anything I set my mind to. And I got her to repeat it throughout the lesson. And by the end of it, she could do it and she was smiling. So it's powerful. Our words are powerful. You can just click once. Just to let you know, I actually have a membership. I'm not going to bang on about the membership, but just so you know, using the code Parenta, you can get £10 off my membership. It's $14.99 for the whole year. There's topic-based resources in it, and there is one for affirmations where you can print off a poster. You can use that as your affirmation for the week. Next one. Another powerful tool is gratitude. So gratitude is proven scientifically to improve mental health. If we live in a state of gratitude, we can't. Depression and appreciation struggle to exist in the same realm. So if we practice gratitude on a daily basis by saying what we are grateful for and why, this has been proven to actually increase happiness. And also, if we can start appreciating what we've got, we'll end up getting more of the good stuff, if that makes sense. So the gratitude circle that I do when I work with early years is I get all the children round and I will start saying things like, thank you for my eyes because I can see. And you always have to say why, because it's the why, the because I cannot, because I can see, it's that bit that gets children to understand the brilliance of what you're talking about. So if you say thank you for my eyes, it don't really mean, much, but thank you for my eyes because I can see these beautiful flowers, I can see my lovely friends. It gives a whole new meaning to it. So I would go around this, I'd say a few things. Thank you for my ears because I can hear. Thank you for my legs because I can walk. And then I would say, thank you for my arms because, and I would stop and let the children finish it. Thank you for my friends because, and stop. And then what you will likely, I found most times, is that a child will shout one themselves. My little girl did it. Thank you for my mummy because I love it. Obviously, that nearly made me cry. But just spending 5 minutes going through what you're grateful for and why, and then at the end, just all of you shout really loud, thank you, thank you, thank you, and that just compounds the appreciation. You can see this picture here where it says gratitude circle. That's a nursery that came on board with this gratitude movement. And they created a board and they do it every day. It's just a lovely way to start your day. And again, we are programming our minds and and it's good for us as well as adults, programming their little minds to think positively and to actually, a positive mind will get positive results. So it's, if we can encourage children to do that, that's the best way forward. Next. The next thing is using stories. Now, I'm going to talk about my stories because obviously they're familiar to me, but there's a load of stories out there that are great for mental well-being. I've written a collection here, you can see on the left, 12 storybooks, and each one has a powerful message. And stories are great because children get obsessed with stories. You read them again and again, again and again. Again, that repetition and consistency, what the messages that they're hearing are what are being absorbed in these belief systems. You can see one at the bottom, the second in from the left, or third in from the left if you take the transition books. Sorry, Sydney, I wrote that book off the back of the story I just told you about Noah. And I thought, you know what, there needs to be a book about teaching you that actually saying sorry is not enough. You need to change your actions. So I wrote Sorry, Sydney. So all of these stories are really powerful. And like I say, if you're reading stories that plant positive seeds, this repetition will help. And also the other thing is storybooks. I don't know about you, but whenever you're going through something in life that's pretty tough, if you know somebody that has been through it and come out the other end, it feels a lot easier. When I was going through a divorce, I felt like the whole world was going to collapse. But I knew people who'd been through a divorce and they'd felt how I felt and they got out the other side. And that in itself gave me a light at the end of the tunnel. I knew it was possible for me to be okay. And storybooks and characters in storybooks can be that friend to children. So this is why I wrote the transition books. I started with Okial's Last Day, when Eleanor, my little girl, was leaving at preschool. And I thought, if this character's been there, he's felt a bit unsure and a bit sad about leaving, but he had a great time and moved on. It's acknowledging her feelings. It's teaching, it's showing her that this little person, this little character came through it. Just like with us grown-ups, when we've got a mate that's gone through what we've gone through, it's the same principle and it worked. So then I wrote a first day at school book, and that's now given as gifts to children to help prepare them emotionally and practically for school life. So books are really powerful tools, and I've got a range here for nurseries and childminders that are given as welcome and leave as gifts. If you click one more, and again in the membership, again, you can get it for $14.99 for the whole year. You get access to all 12 of the main storybooks in video format, plus linking resources to go with them, like finger puppets, storyboard card with emotion cards, masks, pairs cards, Play-Doh boards, all sorts. Each storybook comes with a collection of resources, because the idea is, and I discovered this when my little girl was, when she was 3, I'd written the book and we were bored one day, and I wrote, I quickly, because I'm a teacher and I've always done this, I quickly fired off a resource and we played a game linking to the story. And then as we were playing the game, my daughter started talking about the storybook and the storyline. And as we were doing it, we were chatting about it, and we just had a beautiful conversation about the moral message. And it's almost like she was distracted by the fun activity. So I got so much more out of her. It's like if I said to you all, do you know what, today we're going to talk about your feelings. You'd be like, Stacey, you're a bit weird. No, we're not. But if we were having a cocktail or doing something completely unrelated, we'd most likely get chatting about your feelings. And it's the same principle minus the cocktail with the resources in the membership. They're doing something, linking to the story, and then you are subtly alongside it talking about the character and what's happening. Like this jigsaw you can see here, Cyril the squirrel, she loves all her acorns to be neat, and then they fell over. So as you're doing the jigsaw, you're talking about how she might feel and why, you know, what could she do to feel better. So that's that principle. So basically, in a nutshell, what we consistently do, hear, see and feel becomes belief systems. So it's about looking at our practice, and if we're parents, looking at that, looking at it as a whole. It's not about reproaching ourselves. When we know better, we do better. I've made loads of mistakes. Do you know, being a parent now makes me so much of a better teacher. You know, you learn and you grow as you go along. And for me, it's just about whatever we are doing consistently. And you know, we make mistakes. I'm not going to sit here and profess to be perfect. My daughter drove me to the depths of despair the other day, and I lost my rag. You know, I tend to not do that, but I did. I'm human. But in those moments where we do, it's a perfect opportunity to teach them the art of responsibility and saying sorry, and actually modeling that. Because just because we're grown-ups, we don't always get it right, and we don't need to lead. We don't need to teach children that message either. If we lead by perfection, they're going to have to live up to a lot. Whereas I'm a massive believer that when I get it wrong, I will say to my children, Eleanor, Noah, Mum is really sorry. I was having a very bad day and I reacted poorly, and I apologise for that. You know, sometimes when we're feeling bad, we shout and we don't mean to, but I apologise. And that teaches them, actually, do you know what? It's okay to make mistakes, because as long as you say sorry, you can move forward. So whatever we do, we're giving a positive message, even when we get it wrong. So I hope that was okay. I hope it made sense. I've just remembered that that parental code, I need to set it up. So just give me about 10 minutes after this webinar. That was one of my jobs I was meant to do this morning, but I ended up running around after my 2 children for school run. We know what it's like. So I hope that was okay. I hope it was clear. If there's any questions whatsoever, get in touch with me. Even if you want to get in touch with me on social media, I'm on Early Years Storybox. Just come and drop me a message. I'd be happy to speak to you.
Wow, thank you, Stacey. That was fantastic. Really was. I hope everybody's as inspired as I was. And talking about apologies, I'm going to say sorry for not enabling you to share your screen today.
It's okay. We managed to win our way through it, didn't we?
We did, didn't we? Wow, that was really, really interesting. Thank you. We've had one question in the main thread, and I've had a few sent on the on a different thread as well. So I'll start with this one, Stacey, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
If a child in our setting seems to have a negative outlook, how can we improve this child's belief system so it is more positive? Can we stop this negative process?
It's really hard. You know, being a teacher myself is so hard, because we are an important part of that child's life, but we're not the only part. And quite often a child's belief system, if a child is negative, I've had children, like I said, I had that little girl in my class. And in fact, I've got one example, a little boy, he instantly goes to, I can't do it, I'm rubbish. I've had children sat under the table telling me they're rubbish. It's heartbreaking. All we can do is consistently reinforce that they can. There's going to be so many external factors out there that are out of our control. And you might find that the parents are wired quite similarly. There'll be a cog in the system of that little person's life where this is coming from, and it might be a confidence issue. It might just be that their parents are quite negative and they've learned this behavior. But what I would do, like I did with I think the affirmations is a great thing. The gratitude circle, all these little things that we add to our practice. So the gratitude circle, it's a really positive thing to do. And watch the children. In fact, if you do it, please message me or send me pictures on social media, because I've had this done before. It's gorgeous. You start doing it and everybody's face lights up. Adults as well. I once did some training with adults. And actually the adults all started crying because they started realizing how lucky they were. They were like, I'm so lucky, I'm so blessed. It was lovely. So doing the gratitude circle with that child, create an affirmation for that child that's going to best serve them, and make a game. So I'm a fan of, I draw games, you know, so I'll draw circles and maybe label them. In fact, let me show you. I'll do like numbers 1 to 5. I can't write numbers 1 to 5. Every time, roll the dice. Each person has a board. Roll the dice. For whatever number they roll, they have to tick it. Children love ticking. Tick that number, but they have to shout out loud in a silly voice their affirmation. And they say it. And then you go around and each one of you does it. They might roll a 2, they tick a 2 and they shout, I can do it, I'm amazing. And keep going round, and then they come to them again and they roll another 2. Well, they miss a turn, but they've still got to shout their affirmation. And the first person to tick all 6 numbers is the winner. Simple things like that, games that you can play, but all veering towards being positive.
That's really good, Stacey. Thank you. It kind of leads me on to the next question, actually, talking about games, which I love that idea. Another one that's been sent in is saying, is there a rhyme or a song that we can use with the kids that reinforces positive? So you've mentioned games, but do you have any suggestions for maybe songs?
Right. So when I teach, the children always laugh at me. I'm known as the crazy teacher, because I make them up. So no doubt I could try and make a song up. Let me think. So think of a well-known tune. I can't think of a well-known tune. Think of a well-known tune. What's a well-known tune? Jingle bells. Like, you could just make it up. I am good. I am great. I am everything. I can do it when I try, and I like everything. Something like that. And just make up a song. I'll try and think of one. That would really good.
I love that.
Under pressure. I would make one up. I personally don't have a song yet, but no doubt you've said that, so I'll end up writing a range of songs to go in my membership, because that's how it works. But just get a well-known song, tune that you know, and just come up with some really simple, repetitive phrases. Even if you were just chanting, chanting's good, and doing it in different voices. But I don't know of a song, but I mean, feel free to take that. I won't claim the intellectual property of that one.
Thank you, Stacey. Something's just coming actually from Sebastian. Is there a difference? You've mentioned earlier, you gave us an example of a boy and a girl actually, but is there a difference between the male brain and the female brain when it comes to instilling these belief systems? Do you feel that you need to treat them separately, differently? Are there any kind of obvious differences?
No. But obviously there's the different hormonal things within our bodies. It's a bit of a dicey topic, this, isn't it? We are wired differently, for sure. As in, we are very intrinsic. We can be very intrinsically different. I know that. I've got to be very careful with what I say here. So I know between my boy and my girl, they are very different, and there is a pattern. That I'm not saying that there is a pattern, but for me, with my friends and my network, with the girls and the boys, they're very different with how they are. My Eleanor, used a potty from 12 months old and was determined and independent. My little boy would let me wipe his bottom until I was 16, I think. And, it's not, did I say until I was 16? Until he was 16. They're different. But what I would say is that every single child is different. Every child. Our brains get wired the same way. The repetition and the subconscious mind, it all gets wired the same way. But every single child is different. You never parent the same child twice, do you? And the thing is, it's like, I got my little girl, she came along and I thought, cracked it. My little boy came along, nothing like. Everything I'd learned from my little girl about being a parent was completely null and void. I had to learn it all again. So it's about looking at every individual child. Some children, I think one thing to remember is that behaviour is communication, and the children that are the most unlovable are the ones that need the most love. The ones that drive you crazy, and the ones that display the most unloving actions are quite often the ones that need the most care and love. So it's about looking at that child and seeing their behavior as a communication and thinking, right, so an example, I go into a school one day a week and I help this little boy. Now his behavior is shocking. He throws things, he walks out, but once I've got to know him, the core and everything that underpins that is the fact that he thinks he's worth nothing. He's worth absolutely nothing. He can't do it. He thinks in his words, I'm thick. He's not. He's just got zero confidence. So I started from the ground up. I don't care whether you can add your maths. We started with him. And I would very subtly say to, and I'm not going to say his name, but say, so-and-so, you've done amazing there. I'm so proud of you. There's a lot of power in the word proud. I'm so proud of you, with little things, because the thing is, sometimes we only praise the big things. Take it back, strip it back to the little things. And when it comes to boys and girls, I've personally seen a massive difference in how they are, but I'm not saying that there is. I just think you need to take every child as an individual and look past their behavior, look beyond their behavior and think, what is that telling me about them, and work on that. Because quite often it's confidence and worth. Confidence and worth are the two things. If you build them, you won't go wrong.
Thanks, Stacey. Thank you. Does culture influence a child's belief systems as well? Does it affect their development? Our setting is quite international, and I'm curious.
Culture massively. Right. So religion and culture. There's what's the word? People adhere to their beliefs in their religion, don't they? So they are their actual beliefs that they live by, and their families will reinforce them. So culture plays a massive part in people's lives, and the way that people act. You will know, there'll be certain behavior traits and things within different cultures. Different cultures have different views of men and women, and they have different views of how different roles within our society. There's all sorts of different things, and that will influence how a child acts, for sure, of course. Whatever they're experiencing, and that's their truth. Whatever they live within and whatever we live within, that's our truth. It's like that example I gave of two people walking into a room, and they saw the exact same scenario of that person larger than life. They saw the same thing, but they saw completely different things. It was exactly the same scenario viewed through a lens that's entirely different. And people from different cultures will view exactly the same scenario through an entirely different lens. That's why what's okay to one culture is not okay to another. It's the same thing, just viewed through a lens that is influenced. As for your setting, being multicultural is brilliant. It opens people's worlds and children's minds. I've got in my membership, there's the Chinese New Year book, a Diwali book and an Eid book, teaching all about that and all the resources to go with that. It's brilliant. It keeps their minds open, but you will have a lot of different belief systems going on, if you've got children of those cultures there. And it's important to acknowledge that. And the other thing, I did an article for you, Gail. I wrote an article, do you remember, about the making children of different ethnicities feel welcome? We should dig that out somewhere, maybe, and email that out or put it.
We'll include it in the email.
Yeah, and this was about, do you know what, giving children a sense of belonging, having a sheet of paper with 10 basic phrases of each child. So every child that's in your setting, if there's a Chinese child, if there's a Spanish child, whoever you've got, if you can have, and get the parents involved, you can have 5 or 10 of the core phrases, like, well, please, thank you, hello, are you okay, do you need the toilet? And write them phonetically. You don't have to write them as they're written, because you'd have no chance, would you? But write them phonetically. Ask the parent, how do you say this? Write it phonetically, say it back to them, laminate the card, have the card in your setting and use that card. Make them, and all these little things that we can do make children feel valued. They make them feel a sense of belonging. And it's things that you wouldn't think about doing that. You might, to have a little card, but to actually go out of your way to speak in their language, or to learn about their culture, have a day celebrating their culture, which I'm sure you all do. But it's just these little things, and with our actions consistently showing children that they are valued, they are loved, and they have worth, they belong, making them feel a sense of belonging. Because lots of children, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of children over the years, and some children just don't have a sense of belonging. They've got such tumultuous life outside of us, that sometimes the only love that they get is from us. So we need to shower them with it.
Thank you.
Granted, there needs to be consequences if the behaviour is poor, like that boy that were slinging things and walking out. But gently, you can't do that. We're gonna have to move out of this classroom now. But I'm gonna come with you, and we're gonna talk about it. So he faced the consequence, but he faced it gently with love. If that makes sense.
Thanks, Stacey. Tina's saying, when we were talking just now about the children that were not as receptive, she says we have to be careful that the most challenging child does not become the centre of what other children are talking about. So
yeah, it is so difficult, because, quite like we said, the children that are the most challenging are the ones that need the most love. But then you can't make it so that they get all of your attention. It is so difficult to balance it. It is so difficult. And what, I mean, if there's more than one person in the room, is there a way that, I mean, it depends. If you're a childminder and on your own, it's very, very tough. But if there's someone else in the room, they could deal with that, and then you could go and do something great with the other children. But it's just about dealing with that little person. It's hard to unravel. It is hard to unravel these things, because quite often there's so much going on at home, and that is out of your control. So you can't make them the center of attention, absolutely not, and take it away from the other children. But at the same time, it's about finding the balance with that child. And I've been in situations like that where it's been impossible. It's felt impossible, because you can't tear yourself in two, and that child, it can be very, very wearing on you as a practitioner, as a teacher. It can be so hard to hold that space for them when, you know, they are being disruptive. But maybe, like I said about the games, doing all these little things, all these little practices, the gratitude movement, the affirmations, having games for emotional well-being. I've got an emotional well-being section. In the membership, I've got a 30 days of positivity, and we all do that together, and all these little things that we can do. And then if they do create, which they will, it's about they face the consequences, the other children don't lose out, but also finding a way to get to the root of why. And quite often it'll be to do with worth, and so there'll be something. If that person wants to message me on social media so I can get a more specific, it's very hard to, but you're more than welcome to find me and message me, and I'll tailor what I'm saying more to that child if I can get more of a picture.
Thanks, Stacey. And we have a couple more questions that have come in. One of them is, we've kind of touched on it from the parent side, but as educators, do our own belief systems have an impact on the children in our care? Again, it's that personal feelings, perhaps your past.
I've done articles on this as well.
Yeah.
It is our belief systems. Everything I've talked about today, I've done talks before now, and I've had people come up to me and say, do you know what? I understand myself. So it's like, we all have our belief systems. We all have our own triggers. If we, you know, I quite often when I was younger didn't feel good enough. And we can get triggered. You know, this is why I wrote all the books. I wanted to instill all these things with my children. We can get triggered as practitioners based on our belief systems. So, for example, if a child is acting up, it might press our button. It might within us, or if you can't seem to find a way to do something with a child because they're that difficult, there's a good chance if you have a belief system that you're not good enough, you're going to feel bad. You're going to feel bad as a practitioner, which is not the case. Nobody could do anything because but our own belief systems, we all have them show in our life all the time. Whatever's going on, if you imagine, I always describe life as a game of charades. Imagine that whatever's going on out there is showing you to some degree about your own belief systems. So if you've, for example, grown up with a controlling parent, there's a good chance you've got a belief about control somewhere or other. There's a good chance that something will be happening in your life where you feel controlled, or you're out of control, or there'll be something to do with it. And quite often what we see in others, so it happens with children and with adults, what we see in them can often trigger something inside us. So if, for example, you see an adult that's really, really, I don't know the word for the standard word for gobby. What's the word for gobby? You know what I mean, don't you? Like just a bit loud and garish. That person might really wind you up. Now it's either, if it really winds you up to a point where you literally want to flip, that's when you know you've been triggered. It might frustrate you, but if it makes you just go, lose your mind. They say with psychology that often it's maybe you can be a bit that way sometimes and a bit loud sometimes, or you don't voice your you don't voice yourself enough. So that person's either mirroring back to you a little bit of you, or it's mirroring back what you need more of. Does that make sense? So with a child, if a child is creating, there'll be something within that. If it's really triggering you, it'll either be hooking into your own childhood. There'll be something within you when you were little that is hooking into, or it will reflect back at. So if you imagine a jigsaw piece, your belief system is a jigsaw piece, your scenario is fitting it in some degree. Like me, the girl who liked the bad boy, it weren't a coincidence. Bad boy, bad boy, bad boy. It was the belief system. Once I changed that belief system, the bad boy no longer fit. The bad boy's disappeared. And it's that thing within our practice. It can happen with children. There's nothing like children to teach you about your triggers. Every single trigger you've got inside your body will be activated at some point by a child, particularly your own. They're on this earth to teach us.
Thank you, Stacey. Gosh, that's a lot of food for thought. I think for a lot of people, Tina.
Yeah.
And Tina agrees. She says, I totally agree. All the things we talked about today, and be reflective of what we should practice, and so valuable for nurturing and value to members of staff as well. So thank you, Tina. That's really valuable.
I've done training in nurseries where I've gone in and like I said, I've done the gratitude circle with the staff. And I thought, I don't know how it's going to go. Most powerful thing I've ever done. A room full of adults practicing gratitude. Everyone cried. And it's so important to be aware of our own triggers and what we've gone through. Even if we had the most perfect childhood, there will be things within us that we need to unravel, for sure. I've had many things to unravel. If you come from a broken home, that can cause things to unravel. There's all sorts. It's a minefield. But it's just being aware. It's being aware of our own belief systems. If we've got a belief that we're not good enough, that is going to impact us as a practitioner, because we're going to feel like we're not good enough when actually we're probably brilliant. And the thing is, when you think that you're not good enough, that can veer you in the wrong direction. We're all doing the best that we can, and we've all experienced that child that is, you just don't know what to do with. I've been there, and knowing everything I know, I get there sometimes now and I'm like, oof, I need to take a minute to try and figure this out, because it's tough. And the thing is, they're not just working on your belief systems, they're working on their parents and their culture and everything around them. And then they're coming into your setting but you will be making a difference. Even if that day you tell that child you're proud of them, you're so proud of who they are as well, because it's all right being proud of them for writing the name. What about being proud of them for who they are and proud of the person you are? There's so much power in that. And because if they don't believe that they're good, they're not going to act good. They're just going to act out. A person that feels worthless is never going to step into being their best self, are they? Whereas if they feel that they're worth something, and, catch that child that is really difficult, catch that child doing something really good, and be like, do you know what, Billy, I am so proud of you for being so kind there. I would, we're so lucky to have a friend like you here. And catch him being good. Catch him being good and tell him you're proud of him or her. Catch her being good. Catch them being good and reinforce it.
Thank you, Stacey. That is, I think, as I said earlier, I think that's given us a lot of food for thought and a lot of games to make up and prepare, and songs. And somebody said earlier, Tina again, she said, if you're happy and you know it, makes you smile. That's a good song. Love it. Thank you, Tina.
Change the lyrics to that. So,
perfect.
I'm sure I could, but I'm not gonna. But change the lyrics for positive affirmations and get them in, and watch the little faces light up. But just find ways to catch them, and like do all the games. Like I say, in my membership, like I said, I will set up the Parenta code. Use Parenta. It'll be $14.99 for the entire year. You'll get access to all these storybooks and resources, and you can just print them off, laminate them, have them in your setting, and just do things throughout the day that are educational, but that have a little undercurrent of, nurturing these beliefs, and catch those children being good.
Thank you, Stacey. We'll put a link to that in the email. So the recording of this will be sent out later today or tomorrow, together with Stacey's presentation, and also links to the articles that she's done in the Parenta magazine about affirmations. There's some really interesting articles there, and of course a link to the website as well. So if nobody has any more questions, I think we'll wrap up and say, Stacey, thank you so much. That was absolutely brilliant. We look forward to joining you next month in June. The invitation will be going out shortly. We're focusing on neurodivergence next month, so look out for the invitation. And once again, Stacey, thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
See you soon, everyone.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.